In what ways does your media product use, develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? As our film is of the slasher genre, there are a lot of conventions which we needed to use or to take into consideration. Like most slasher films, ours included a girl being killed at the end, known as the final girl. We thought this would be good to include as it sticks to the typical conventions shown throughout the genre. We also based our opening on the ideas from the film Halloween and Friday the 13th, in which there are 2 murders just at the beginning. I believe this to be an efficient way in showing the killer and his power over the characters, and also making sure there is a steady pace as to which the film follows and allows the plot to develop thoroughly throughout the film. We decided to make our film very modern and set it locally to us. This could be seen as going against the conventions, as most of the famous slasher films such as Scream or Nightmare on Elm Street are based in America. However, one of the things that we were told after handing out our survey was that there was not much believability to a lot of slasher films and that they were possibly too far-fetched. So we took this information and decided to make it much more relatable to our target audience, who also live locally and may therefore enjoy the setting and style used in our film. They could also possibly feel more scared due to the fact that it's set close to home. One of the most common conventions used in slasher films is having a moral background to the story. For example, in Friday the 13th, the characters who are killed have done something wrong, such as taking drugs. We have taken advantage of this and decided that the murderer will be murdering the characters who originally killed his daughter, showing that bad things always happen to bad people. We have also involved issues which affect everyone, such as smoking and violence, throughout our film, which are usually extremely relatable to an audience and in keeping with the convention in using morals as a basis for the storyline. We have stuck to one of the most used conventions in slasher films by making a male antagonist who empowers over all characters. However, by also having a male victim, this could equal out the empowerment of the male and female characters by making sure that overall man doesn't dominate, which would hopefully attract a wider female audience due to the break of stereotypes. Throughout the film, we have also made sure that you cannot see the killer's face. This is once again a typical convention of the genre and is a very simple way to create tension for the audience and make them empathise with the character, as they also have no idea who's doing what. The type of music we have used throughout our film sticks to the conventions of slasher films, with the use of tense music and powerful loud sound effects. However, we have not used a monotone drone. We did contemplate whether to include a drone, but we thought that it would best suit our film and its plot if we stuck to modern music at the beginning and the high-pitched music in the necessary moments. Our title sequence is very different from the typical slasher genre for the most part, as we have tried to make it seem more modern and therefore more relatable to the audience. We did this with the use of music and costume, which then contrasts to the stereotypical use of red writing on a black screen to portray our title. How does your media product represent particular social groups? Our film is mainly based around a group of teenagers who live in the area of Essex. We have decided to use a stereotype of hoodies or chavs and have used this to our advantage by making our film seem more relatable to British audience, especially as they can relate to these kinds of people. However, it may show this specific social group in a bad light or just reintroduce a stereotype that all teenagers are violent and immoral, although this allows our film to once again use a typical slasher convention of including stereotypes. Our film is also based around the lower class, meaning the characters involved are not extremely rich or extremely poor. With this, they could see to also be represented in a bad way, as they are being generalised into a group of violent people, even though this is not the case. However, by doing this, we are sticking to the typical conventions and stereotypes which are always included in the slasher genre. It may also be seen to represent the male and female gender differently, with the male murderer being the powerful gender and the female being the vulnerable gender at the end. This also links to the stereotype of the man being of a higher status, which could show how in slasher films the convention used are not always as modern as the plot itself. However, we decided to portray the male antagonist as the higher sex and thought it would be appropriate to have a shot of him standing at the top of the stairs, almost looking down on the victim, ultimately giving him the power in the scene. What kind of media institution might distribute your media product and why? I thought that we would use a rather well-known American distributor such as Dimension Films, as they are known to have distributed Halloween, The New Black Christmas, and the upcoming Scream 4 film. By using a distributor such as Dimension Films while part of the Weinstein Company, we would be using an experienced company in dealing with the slasher genre, meaning that we know they would be more than capable of suitably marketing our film to our targeted audience. Also, by using an American distributor, there would be more money that could be invested in the film, so we would know the film would be marketed and advertised extremely well. By using an American distribution company such as Dimension Films, we are also gaining access to a much wider audience, which could even result in a global audience, and by marketing the film through Dimension Films, we could be opening the minds to those who have not yet experienced the slasher genre, whilst getting across the moral issues of the film at the same time. Who would be the audience for media product? After sending out a questionnaire, we established that the audience for our film would be teenagers and young adults, varying from the age of 16 to 35-year-olds. This is possibly because the issues which usually arise in slasher films are more relatable to those of a younger age, such as gang violence. Another reason as to why our audience is of such a young age may also be due to the fact that the actors are around the same age, which once again makes the film more relatable but also contributes to the typical conventions of a slasher film. There is also the obvious fact that you would not usually come across 6-year-olds who would enjoy watching violent, bloodthirsty films, as it is not typical behaviour of someone that age, whereas teenagers are known for playing violent games, and most hoodies or chavs are usually of the younger age, just like in our film. How did you address your audience? We sent out a questionnaire to 20 people and interviewed around 10 of them. Of those 20 people, we discovered the issues as to why the slasher genre doesn't appeal to all. This wasn't simply because of the amount of violence or blood which occurs, but that the issues and the plot itself were not intense enough and weren't relatable at all. With this, we could attract our audience by taking into consideration their ideas, by including the social groups which they know of and can relate to, and by adding in a bit of subtle violence, as many people thought slasher films were just pointless bloodbaths. However, we did see that there were some people who thought that just the idea of a violent death was better than actually seeing it happen, so we made sure to include blackouts in certain areas to tastefully portray the deaths of the characters. A huge problem in slasher films seemed to be the choice of weapon. We expected many people to say weapons which aren't of common use, however the majority said that a knife was the best weapon to use, so we took their advice and stuck to the conventional knife as the weapon. We also recently put the film up on Facebook to get constructive feedback from our peers and to also find out what they think. We use Facebook because the majority of people use it constantly, and therefore it could even be a good way of virally marketing our film, and this way we have taken Web 2.0 into consideration. Word of mouth was another way in which we addressed our audience. By telling just one person about a film, they can then spread the word to many more, which would hopefully increase the amount of people who would want to watch our film, and therefore increase the amount of money made to allow even more effective advertisement and distribution. What have you learnt about technologies from the process of constructing this product? This is my first year as a media student, and so before this year I had never even seen an Apple Mac, therefore I've never used GarageBand or even iMovie. After filming our film, I learnt swiftly how easy it is to use both iMovie and GarageBand, and edited a lot of the film without help, and we even managed to create a song on GarageBand that has been included in our film. We also took advantage of varying the technology used to film our movie. We originally used a camcorder from the school like everyone else, then we decided to use an iPhone, which not only had better quality, but we could then portray our view on what the killer's mind would be like. Since he's lost his child, he has turned insane, and the constant change from portrait to landscape shot is seen to reflect this and his immoral and unethical behaviour. There is also a restrictive view in a few shots, which could be seen to relate to all of the goings-on in his mind and how he is never completely focused. During the planning process, I created a mood board which showed the key influences of a slasher film. With this, it was easier to construct the animatic and the storyboard itself due to the wide variation of ideas and conventions involved in the mood board. Another new technology used was the online site Prezi, which creates a great way to focus on specific points of the extract of the film. By using Prezi, it was not only pleasing to the eye, but it's also extremely easy to use and a very good way into showing what's needed. Looking back at your preliminary task, what do you feel you have learned in the progression from it to the full product? As said before, this is my first year as a media student, meaning that I was new to the idea of the 180-degree rule and the rule of thirds. However, I now know the difference between these ways of creating continuity, and I believe I can use them efficiently. Throughout our film, there is the use of rule of thirds in every shot. This is to help with the continuity of our film and make the image more pleasing to the audience. Another way of creating continuity in our film was using match in action. We use this when the female character opens the wardrobe door to find her friend's body hanging there. We use this because it added to the tension of the moment, and also it related to her mind being all over the place with confusion as to where her friend has disappeared to. After the preliminary task, I now see that mise-en-scene is key to any type of film. It seems essential to me now to look into the lighting of the shots and the costumes, which we made sure to use in our film to effectively show the emotions of the characters and the society and time in which they live in. By making the majority of the shots dark, we were able to portray some sort of danger or sadness to the characters, and as the characters are in some sort of gang, we were able to portray that by making them wear typical clothing of that particular social group. I also now understand the absolute need for music and sound effects, and although we didn't have time to include these in our preliminary task, after doing the full product, I now see how one bit of music can completely change the genre and how the film is portrayed by the audience. We managed to use music in the essential bits of our film, such as the chase, which needed music to create the tension for the audience. We also decided to use the sound effect of having a scream so that we could use a blackout in the shot but still portray what was happening. This was so that we could appeal to a wide audience, even those who weren't particularly fond of blood or violence.